I need to make love. Don't move. I need to make love, Arthur. The words, fragile as spun glass, trembled from Mai Ling's lips as she stood in the warm glow of the hearth. Outside, a Christmas Eve blizzard raged across the vast Wyoming landscape, burying the world in a shroud of white. Her delicate hands, usually stained with herbs and tinctures, adjusted the collar on Arthur Hayes's simple woolen shirt. Even in her modest dress, the beautiful Chinese widow possessed a quiet grace that seemed to fill the lonely ranch house, her fingers lingering against his chest longer than necessary. Arthur's breath caught. He was a quiet man who'd worked his failing ranch alone for 5 long years, never expecting the apothecary's widow to touch him like this, like she needed him. Mai Ling's dark, almond-shaped eyes burned with 18 months of desperate loneliness as she whispered again, I need to make love, Arthur. But I'm terrified. The lonely rancher stood motionless beneath her touch, the howling wind a stark contrast to the charged silence between them. What he did next would send shockwaves through the entire town of Frost Creek. But would this beautiful widow's forbidden confession destroy them both? And what was the lonely rancher hiding behind those downcast eyes that made him crave her quiet strength instead of seeing her as a fragile outsider? 3 months earlier, Mai Ling had stopped crying. The tears had frozen solid the day after they buried Wei, her beloved husband, killed in a rock slide in the silver mine. He had been a scholar, not a miner, but this new world demanded different sacrifices. For 18 months, she had existed alone in their small apothecary, grinding herbs until her fingers ached. If she stopped moving, if she allowed herself to feel, the grief and the crushing loneliness would swallow her whole. Mai Ling had learned early that the world wasn't made for a woman like her in a place like this. Too foreign, too quiet, too different. But Wei had loved her exactly as she was, called her his steadfast lotus, and when he died, she believed that kind of acceptance had died with him. The morning Arthur Hayes first walked into her shop changed everything, though she didn't know it yet. A deep, racking cough had settled in his lungs, and he stood in her doorway with his hat in his hands, snow melting from his worn boots onto the floorboards. Grief had carved lines around his mouth that made him look older than 38. His wife, Mary, had died 5 years back, taking their stillborn child with her. The town whispered he'd lost a part of himself that day, working himself numb on that failing ranch just to keep from remembering. But when Arthur looked at Mai Ling, he didn't look past her like most townsfolk did, or stare with unwelcome curiosity. His grey eyes met hers straight on, and something in her chest that had been frozen for 18 months cracked just a little. Heard your remedies work better than anything the doc prescribes, he said, his voice raspy from the cough but steady and respectful. It made her want to weep for reasons she couldn't name. They are from my home. Old ways, she managed, wiping her hands on her clean apron. Please, sit. As she prepared a steaming mug of herbal tea, Arthur spoke not of his own ailment, but of the town, the coming winter, the way the snow settled on the pines. He spoke to her like she was a person, not a curiosity. This man spoke with a kindness that seemed a language he'd never forgotten, even after everything he'd lost. This will help the cough, Mai Ling said, her voice soft. Drink it slowly. Arthur's lips quirked into something almost like a smile. You have a gentle way about you, then, softer, it's a welcome thing. Something warm bloomed in Mai Ling's chest. Dangerous and terrifying. She expected him to pay and leave, to retreat back into his solitude. But he lingered, his gaze warm, and said, any person who can't see the kindness in a soul like yours is a fool. And I've been called many things, but never that. His hand brushed hers as he took the small packet of herbs she offered, his touch warm and solid, and Mai Ling forgot how to breathe. Nobody touched her casually anymore. Nobody reached for her like she was something other than a foreigner or a tragic figure. That will be 10 cents, she whispered, her voice gone rough. Arthur pressed the coins into her palm, his fingers lingering against hers in a way that made her pulse hammer wild. I'll be back, he promised. Winter is long. A man can always use more tea. Mai Ling knew it. Arthur knew it. And the way he looked at her before stepping back out into the swirling snow told her he was already looking for a reason to return. She watched him walk away across the snow-dusted street, her palm still burning where he'd touched it. And Mei Ling let herself hope for the first time since they had lowered way into the frozen ground. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't done being seen after all. Arthur came back in 3 days, with a perfectly sound explanation of a sprained wrist from a fall on the ice. Mei Ling saw him coming up the street, and her heart did something stupid. It leaped like a girl's, not a 34-year-old widow's who should know better. She tried to look casual, like she hadn't thought about those grey eyes every night since he left. Like she hadn't dreamed about the way his voice had gone soft when he called her. He unwrapped the bandage with a wince that wasn't entirely convincing. Took a spill near the barn, he said, meeting her eyes with something that looked almost like nervousness. Thought you might have a liniment. Mei Ling looked at the wrist, looked at Arthur, looked back at the wrist which showed no swelling or discoloration. It is so, she said, fighting a smile. Arthur's ears went red. Well, it's a bad sprain, he amended. Figured it's better to be safe. The lie sat between them like a gift, and Mei Ling felt something in her chest unfold, warm and terrifying. He'd invented an injury just to see her again. Come inside, she said. I will prepare something. The visits became a rhythm after that, steady as a heartbeat. Every few days, Arthur found new reasons. A poultice for a lame horse. A sleeping draught for his restless nights. Advice on which herbs might keep through the winter. Each time he stayed longer, and each time Mei Ling found herself working slower, stretching out the minutes like taffy, reluctant to watch him walk away. They talked while she mixed her remedies, about everything and nothing. He told her about Mary, how losing her and the baby had carved him hollow. Felt like God reached inside and scooped out everything that made me human, Arthur said one evening, his voice raw. Spent 5 years just existing, going through motions. He looked at Mei Ling then, really looked at her. Then I met you, and I remembered what it felt like to want to wake up in the morning. Mei Ling's hand stilled over a porcelain bowl of dried lavender. Arthur, I know it's only been a few weeks, he said quickly. I know you probably think I'm crazy, coming here with my made-up sprains and my sleepless nights, he laughed, but it was shaky. Maybe I am crazy. But, Mei Ling, when I'm here, watching you work, listening to you talk about your herbs and your father teaching you the old ways and how Wei used to read you poetry. His voice cracked. I don't feel alone anymore. And I haven't felt that in 5 years. The small apothecary suddenly felt too small, too warm, too full of everything Mei Ling had been afraid to want. She set down her pestle with hands that shook. Wei was a good man, she whispered. He loved me as I am. Called me his steadfast lotus, and never once made me feel like I did not belong. Tears burned her eyes. I do not think I will find that twice in one lifetime, Arthur. I do not think the world works that way for a woman like me. Arthur stood up then and moved closer, and Mei Ling's breath caught because he was looking at her the way Wei used to, like she was everything. Mei Ling, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. I don't come here for the liniment. I come because you make me laugh with your quiet observations about the townsfolk. I come because you listen when I talk about my ranch, and you don't look at me with pity. He stepped closer still, close enough that she could smell winter air and wood smoke and something uniquely him. I come because I'm falling in love with you, and I needed you to know before I lost my nerve. The world tilted. Mei Ling grabbed the workbench to steady herself, certain she'd misheard, certain this was some cruel dream. Arthur, I am, the words tangled in her throat. A foreigner, a strange woman, an outcast. All the things she'd been made to feel her whole life. You are, Arthur's voice was gentle. He reached out and cupped her cheek with heartbreaking tenderness. Mary was from here. Knew everyone, belonged everywhere. Hair like sunshine, his thumb brushed her cheekbone. I loved her with everything I had, Mei Ling. I'll always love her. But you, his voice broke. You are not a burden. You are exactly enough. You're what I didn't know I needed until I was drowning. And you threw me a rope without even knowing it. Mei Ling pulled back, fear cascading through her like ice water. This was the moment it would all fall apart. This town will crucify you, Arthur. They already whisper. They will make your life hell if you're seen courting me. And for what? For a woman who will only ever be an outsider? A woman who brings nothing but suspicion. Let them talk. Arthur's eyes blazed. Let them whisper. Let them make my life hell. You don't understand. My life is already hell. The words exploded from him, raw and ragged. I wake up alone in a house that's too quiet. I eat breakfast alone. I work myself until I can't see straight, just so I'll sleep without dreaming about graves too small for a baby who never got to live. Tears stream down his face now, and he didn't wipe them away. Then I met you, Mai-ling, and for the first time in 5 years, I want to wake up. I want to eat breakfast with someone. I want to dream about something other than death. He grabbed her hand, placed it against his chest, where his heart hammered wild and desperate. I want to wake up next to you, and I don't care who knows it. Arthur, they will hurt you, Mai-ling whispered, her hand shaking so hard she could barely feel his heartbeat under her palm. They will ruin your business, your reputation. I am not asking you to hide. Arthur's voice went low, fierce. I am not asking you to be anything other than exactly who you are. I'm asking you to be yourself, to let me love you without you shrinking to fit some impossible idea of what this town wants you to be. I'm asking you to love me back. His eyes searched hers. Can you do that, Mai-ling? Can you let yourself be loved by someone who wants your spirit? Not in spite of who you are, but because of it. The question hung between them, pulsing with possibility and terror. Mai-ling opened her mouth to answer, to say yes, to say she thought of him every night, when the door to the shop chimed open. Sheriff Brody stood there with 2 members of the town council, their faces grim and officious. Hayes, Brody said, not bothering with pleasantries. We need to discuss the situation here. His eyes slid past Arthur to Mai-ling. Been thinking we could arrange something suitable. A few good men in this town might be willing to take on the property, and the widow, if the terms are right. Get out. Arthur's voice was ice and iron. Now, Hayes, we're trying to help, Councilman Gable said in a patronizing tone. She can't run this place forever. And face facts. She's not exactly the marrying kind around here without some incentive. I said get out. Arthur stepped in front of Mai-ling, shielding her, and though he was not a large man, his presence was formidable. The men backed away, muttering about meddling and foreign troubles, but Mai-ling knew what was coming. They'd call a town meeting. They'd discuss her like she was property. They'd decide her future without her. Arthur's hand found hers in the ringing silence. Mai-ling, he said quietly. My plan was to ask you to marry me. But I think I need to do something else first. His jaw was set in a way that made him look dangerous. I think I need to remind this town that you are not property to be managed. Arthur, what are you? But he was already walking toward the door. He turned back, his eyes holding something that looked like rage wrapped in righteousness. Christmas Eve, he said. The church service. Be there, Mai-ling. Because I'm about to shock the entire town of Frost Creek, and I need you to trust me when I do. Then he was gone, and Mai-ling was left standing in her shop with her heart hammering and the terrible, wonderful certainty that everything was about to change. The Christmas Eve service was packed. Ranchers, shopkeepers, their wives in their finest wools. All gathered to sing carols and celebrate the birth of the Savior, while casting furtive glances at Mai-ling, who sat alone in the back pew. She wasn't invited, not truly. She was the subject of their gossip, not a part of their community. But she came anyway, her jaw set, watching them. Just as the pastor began his sermon, the main doors creaked open. Arthur Hayes walked in, his face carved from stone, and the room went silent. He moved down the central aisle, straight to the front. Pastor, forgive me, Arthur said, his voice ringing clear as a bell. The pastor stopped, mouth agape. Arthur turned to face the congregation, his eyes finding Mai-ling at the back, and something in them made her knees weak. We came here tonight to talk about hope and grace, Arthur began. But I've heard whispers in this town that are the opposite of both. Whispers about a good woman, treating her like she is a problem. Like she is property, the room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Arthur raised his voice over the chaos. My Ling is not a problem. She is not a situation. She has more courage and dignity in her heart than this entire town combined. He walked down the aisle, the crowd parting as he moved toward My Ling. Every eye followed, every breath held. She is also the woman I love, Arthur said, his voice carrying to every corner. The woman I intend to marry, if she'll have me. The gasps were audible now. Mrs. Gable clutched her pearls. Sheriff Brody's face was a mask of disbelief. Arthur reached My Ling where she stood, frozen in the aisle, and without hesitation, without shame, he dropped to one knee in the worn floorboards of the church, in front of God and everyone. My Ling, Arthur's voice cracked but held steady. I'm not much. I've got a failing ranch and a broken heart that's just starting to heal. And I know these people will make it hard on us. He pulled a simple gold band from his pocket. But I love you. I love your quiet strength, your gentle hands, the way your eyes see the man I want to be. I love that you make me want to live again. Tears streamed down his face. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to be my wife, my partner, my steadfast lotus. Marry me, My Ling. Let me spend my life proving you are not an outsider. You are my home. The silence was deafening. 300 people held their breath. My Ling looked at Arthur, kneeling before her, at the ring sized for her delicate hand, at the town that had spent 18 months ignoring her. Her voice came out broken and beautiful. Yes, then louder, fierce. Yes. Arthur surged up and My Ling met him in a kiss that was scandalous and perfect and everything. The church hall exploded, some cheering, some gasping, but Arthur and My Ling didn't care. They walked out hand in hand, into the silent, holy night, leaving Frost Creek to gossip about the day love shocked them all. Which brought them here, to his ranch house, hours later. The blizzard had passed, leaving a world of pristine white under a sky full of stars. But now, alone, Maggie stood by the window, trembling. I'm terrified, she whispered. Arthur turned her around, looking at her with those steady grey eyes. Then we'll be terrified together. But My Ling, I need you to hear this. I'm not afraid of the town. I'm asking for all of you. Your past, your fears, your strength. He pulled her toward their bed, his touch gentle but firm. I need to make love. Don't move, he whispered, echoing her earlier words but changing their meaning entirely. It was not a demand, but a plea. I need you exactly as you are. No holding back.